24 hours ago, I was dying alone, choking on a piece of toast in my apartment. Now I'm a mute omega being hunted by everyone and protected by 3 alphas who hate each other. They say whoever marks me becomes the most powerful alpha alive, which sounds great for them but absolutely terrible for me. Now that you're here, my sweethearts, welcome and thank you for your support and engagement. Kindly like and subscribe if you haven't, cause you definitely don't want to miss out as we begin. The moment I opened my eyes in this new world, I knew something was off. My throat felt strange, like someone had wrapped invisible chains around my vocal cords. I tried to say something, anything, but nothing came out. Panic set in fast. I sat up in bed, gripping the silk sheets beneath me, and that's when the memories hit. Not mine, but the original owner of this body. His name was Winston, and he was an omega, a special one apparently, the kind that legends whispered about in hushed tones. Whoever marked him first wouldn't just gain a mate, they'd gain power beyond imagination. Their bloodline would be unstoppable, their strength unmatched. And the original Winston? He'd been promised to some horrible alpha in an arranged bond that was supposed to be sealed today. I jumped out of bed so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. No way. Absolutely not. I wasn't about to let some stranger bite my neck and claim me for eternity. The problem was, I had no voice to refuse with. The universe really had a twisted sense of humor. I grabbed a jacket from the closet and bolted. The mansion I'd woken up in was massive, all gleaming floors and fancy paintings that probably cost more than my entire previous life. I didn't care. I ran through hallways, down staircases, until I burst through the front door into the cool evening air. Freedom tasted sweet for about 5 seconds. That's when I crashed straight into someone's chest, solid, unmovable, and radiating the kind of presence that made my new omega instincts scream alpha in capital letters. I stumbled back, looking up into the most intense golden eyes I'd ever seen. Well, the man said, his voice smooth but carrying an edge that suggested danger. What do we have here? He wasn't alone. 2 other men stood nearby, both turning to look at me with varying expressions of surprise and something else. Something hungry. The 3 of them had clearly just arrived, probably from some meeting based on their formal clothes. They looked like they'd walked straight out of a crime drama, powerful, dangerous, and way too interested in me. The first one, the golden-eyed alpha, had dark hair that fell messily across his forehead. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. You're an omega. Not a question. A statement. The second alpha stepped closer, and I had to crane my neck to meet his gaze. He was tall, ridiculously so, with silver white hair that shouldn't have looked natural but somehow did. His eyes were ice blue, cold and calculating. Not just any omega, he murmured, and I watched his nostrils flare slightly. You're unmarked? The third one finished, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. He had bronze skin and emerald green eyes that sparkled with something between mischief and danger. His lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And running away from something, I'd bet. I wanted to tell them to back off, to mind their own business. But all I could do was open my mouth uselessly. No sound came out, not even a squeak. The golden-eyed alpha's expression shifted, something like understanding crossing his features. You can't speak. I nodded, frustrated tears pricking at my eyes. This was not how I'd planned my grand escape. Matthias, the tall one said, addressing the golden-eyed alpha. Do you feel that? Matthias, apparently, took a step closer to me and I instinctively backed away. He paused, holding up his hands in what might have been meant as a peaceful gesture if his eyes weren't literally glowing. Easy. I'm not going to hurt you, but Reed's right. There's something different about you. Something powerful, the bronze-skinned alpha supplied. His smile widened. Oh, this is interesting. Very interesting. I'm Edward, by the way, little omega, and you've just become the most valuable thing in this city. I didn't like the sound of that. Not one bit. Reed, the silver-haired giant, moved so fast I barely saw him. Suddenly he was beside me, one hand reaching out to touch my arm. The contact sent a jolt through my entire body, warm, electric, terrifying. An omega whose mark could grant ultimate power, he said softly. The legends were true. Oh no, oh no, they knew. Somehow, these three strangers knew exactly what kind of omega I was. And based on the way they were all looking at me now, intense, possessive, determined, they wanted that power for themselves. Matthias's eyes narrowed as he looked at the other two. Back off, both of you. I saw him first. Edward laughed, the sound sharp and dangerous. Saw him first? What are we, children, calling dibs? This omega is too important to claim based on who spotted him fastest. Then perhaps we should let him choose, Reed suggested, though his grip on my arm tightened ever so slightly. Possessive. Territorial. I yanked my arm away from Reed and shook my head frantically. Choose? Choose? I didn't want to choose any of them. I wanted to run far, far away and figure out how to survive in this crazy werewolf world without becoming some power-up trophy for an alpha with a god complex. But I couldn't say any of that. I could only stare at them, wide-eyed and mute. Matthias reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notepad and pen. He offered them to me with surprising gentleness. Here, write what you want to say. I snatched the items gratefully and scribbled quickly. Leave me alone. I'm not interested in being marked by anyone. Edward leaned over to read what I'd written and laughed again. Oh, he's got spirit. I like that. Your preferences are noted, Reed said, completely ignoring what I'd actually written. However, you should know that you're in danger. An unmated omega as special as you? Every alpha in the territory will be hunting you by morning. I wrote again, pressing so hard the pen nearly tore through the paper. So what? That's my problem. Matthias's expression softened slightly. It doesn't have to be. Accept my protection. My pack is strong. I can keep you safe. His pack? Edward scoffed. Please. The Volkov family is nothing compared to my network. Little Omega. I could hide you so well not even the moon goddess herself could find you. Reed's eyes flashed with irritation. Both of your organizations are inferior to mine. I have resources you couldn't dream of, Omega. Choose me, and you'll want for nothing. They were arguing. Over me. Like I was some prize in a competition. I wanted to scream. Instead, I wrote in big, angry letters. You're all insane. I'm leaving. I tried to push past them, but Matthias blocked my path. Not aggressively, he didn't grab me or threaten me, he just stood there immovable. Where will you go? He asked quietly. You have no voice to call for help, no pack to protect you, and by now your intended mate has probably realized you've run. He'll be looking for you. That stopped me cold, right? The original Winston's arranged mate. I'd almost forgotten about him in all this chaos. Your scent is already spreading through the city? Reed added, not unkindly. Every alpha with working senses will know you're here, unclaimed and vulnerable. You won't last the night alone. I hated that he was probably right. I hated all of this. Edward crouched down to my eye level, his green eyes twinkling with amusement and something that might have been genuine concern. Look, we're not trying to scare you. Well, maybe a little, but it's true. You need protection and we're offering it. Freely. Freely? I wrote, underlining it 3 times. What's the catch? Smart little thing, Edward murmured approvingly. The catch is simple. We each want the chance to win your favor, to prove we're worthy of your mark. But the choice ultimately will be yours. Matthias shot Edward a sharp look. Speak for yourself. I'm not sharing. Neither am I, Reed said coldly. Which is why, Edward continued, ignoring them both, we're going to have to compete. May the best alpha win. This was ridiculous. This was absolutely, completely ridiculous. But as I looked between the 3 of them, Matthias with his golden eyes and quiet intensity, Reed with his calculating ice blue gaze, and Edward with his dangerous smile, I realized I didn't have many options. They were right about one thing. I wouldn't survive alone. Not in this world, not as a mute omega with a target on my back. I took a deep breath and wrote, Fine. but no biting without permission, and no fighting each other. All three of them looked at my note and then at each other. The tension in the air could have been cut with a knife. Agreed, Matthias said finally. For now, Reed added. Edward just grinned. This is going to be fun. I had a feeling my definition of fun and his were very, very different. They took me to what Edward called a neutral location. A penthouse apartment in the city that apparently belonged to none of them, but was nice enough that I suspected someone rich owned it. The place was huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering lights of the city below. You'll stay here, Matthias announced, like it was already decided. Under our joint protection until you make your choice. Joint protection, right? Because three rival mafia alphas could definitely work together without murdering each other. Reed was already on his phone, barking orders at someone in a clipped tone. Security around the building, 24/7. No one gets in without my clearance. Our clearance, Edward corrected, dropping onto the leather couch with the casual grace of a cat. We're all in this together, remember? One big, happy, temporary alliance. The look Matthias shot him could have melted steel. This alliance ends the moment he chooses. Remember that. I stood in the middle of the room, clutching my notepad, and wondered what my life had become. Yesterday, I was a normal person eating toast. Today, I was apparently the most sought-after Omega in the werewolf world, being fought over by three dangerous alphas. Edward patted the spot next to him on the couch. Come sit, little Omega. You look like you're about to collapse. I hesitated, but my legs were tired from running. So I perched on the edge of the couch, as far from Edward as possible. He noticed and chuckled. Scared of me? I wrote quickly, cautious. There's a difference. Smart, he repeated, seeming genuinely pleased. I really do like you already. Matthias appeared with a glass of water, offering it to me. I took it, surprised by the gesture. He noticed my expression and shrugged. You're under my protection now. That means I take care of you. Under our protection, Reed corrected irritably, ending his phone call. And he needs more than water. When did you last eat? I had to think about that. The original Winston's memories were fuzzy on recent details. I shrugged. All three alphas looked concerned, which was oddly touching considering they were supposed to be ruthless mafia bosses. I'll order food, Edward declared, already pulling out his phone. What do you like, little Omega? I wrote, anything. Not picky. Good, because I'm getting everything, Edward said cheerfully. Pizza, pasta, sushi, burgers. We'll figure out your favorites. Reed frowned. That's excessive. You're excessive, Edward shot back. Let me spoil our Omega in peace. He's not our Omega, Matthias said through gritted teeth. He's his own person. Finally, something we agree on, Reed muttered. I watched them bicker and felt a headache forming. This was going to be my life now, wasn't it? Stuck between three territorial alphas who couldn't go 5 minutes without arguing. I scribbled on my notepad and held it up. Can you three try to get along? Please? They all looked at my note, then at each other, then back at me. For you, Matthias said softly. I'll try. Temporarily, Reed added. Edward saluted. Scout's honor. Though I was never actually a scout. It wasn't much, but it was something. The food arrived about 30 minutes later, and Edward hadn't been kidding about ordering everything. The delivery people brought up bags and bags of food until the dining table was completely covered. This is insane, I wrote, staring at the mountain of food. Edward shrugged, already opening a pizza box. You said you weren't picky. I wanted options. Matthias pulled out a chair for me with careful courtesy. Sit. Eat whatever you want. I sat down, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of choices. Reed placed a plate in front of me and started adding small portions of different things. A slice of pizza, some pasta, a piece of sushi. Try these first, he said. See what you actually enjoy. It was surprisingly thoughtful. I picked up the pizza slice and took a bite. And oh my God, it was delicious. I'd apparently died before getting to eat properly, and this body was hungry. The three alphas sat around the table with me, eating their own meals but mostly watching me. It should have been creepy, but somehow it wasn't. They seemed genuinely interested in my reactions to the food. "He likes the pizza," Edward observed with a grin when I reached for a second slice. "And the pasta," Matthias added, nodding toward my plate where I'd eaten all of the noodles. Reed looked smug. I chose well. They were competing over who picked the best food for me. This was my life now. After dinner, exhaustion hit me like a truck. The adrenaline from everything that had happened finally wore off, and I could barely keep my eyes open. Matthias noticed first. "You need rest. The bedrooms are upstairs. Take your pick." I nodded gratefully and stood, but my legs wobbled. Apparently running away, meeting 3 Mafia alphas, and eating my weight in various cuisines had taken more out of me than I'd thought. Before I could fall, strong arms caught me. Reed had moved faster than should have been possible, scooping me up like I weighed nothing. "Careful." I wanted to protest, to insist I could walk on my own, but honestly, I was too tired to care. I let him carry me upstairs, aware of Matthias and Edward following close behind. The bedrooms were all equally fancy. I pointed to the one in the middle, and Reed set me down gently on the bed. The mattress was so soft I immediately sank into it. "Sleep," Matthias said quietly from the doorway. "We'll be here if you need anything." "We take shifts watching the building," Reed explained. "You're completely safe." Edward winked at me. "Sweet dreams, little Omega." They left, closing the door softly behind them, and I was alone for the first time since this whole crazy situation started. I should have been planning my next escape attempt or figuring out how to navigate this dangerous new world. Instead, I fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. Dear family, I really want to wake up to you subscribing to this channel. That'd sure relieve the tension wrapping up my head. Thank you once again. The next day, I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, I forgot where I was and almost called out for my roommate from my old life. Then reality crashed back. Right, I was dead, transmigrated, mute, and currently being fought over by 3 alpha mafia bosses. Just another normal morning. I dragged myself out of bed and found clothes laid out on a chair. Soft, comfortable things in my size. Someone had gone shopping while I slept, apparently. I changed quickly and headed downstairs, following the scent of coffee and... Was that bacon? The kitchen was a scene of barely controlled chaos. Matthias stood at the stove, cooking what looked like a full breakfast spread. Reed sat at the counter with his laptop, probably running his criminal empire while drinking espresso. And Edward was attempting to make pancakes, though based on the mess around him, it wasn't going well. "Good morning, little Omega," Edward called cheerfully when he spotted me. "I'm making pancakes." "Well, trying to. Turns out cooking is harder than it looks." I walked over and peered at his creation. It looked more like a pancake-shaped disaster than actual food. "Don't eat that," Matthias advised without looking up from the stove. "I'm making real breakfast." "My pancakes are fine," Edward protested. "Your pancakes are a health hazard," Reed said dryly. I couldn't help it. I smiled. Just a little. These 3 were ridiculous. Matthias noticed my smile and something warm flickered in his golden eyes. "Sit. Food's almost ready." I sat at the counter next to Reed, who glanced at me and then pushed his coffee cup toward me. "Try this. It's good." I took a sip and immediately regretted it. The coffee was so strong it could probably wake the dead. I made a face and Reed actually laughed. A short, surprised sound that made him seem almost human instead of terrifying. "Too strong," he acknowledged, taking the cup back. "I'll make you something sweeter." Edward abandoned his pancake attempt and came over, holding out his phone. "While you were sleeping, I did some research about your condition, the muteness." I tensed. The original Winston's memories hadn't included much about why he couldn't speak, just that it had been that way for as long as he could remember. "According to what I found," Edward continued, his expression unusually serious, "some Omegas lose their voice due to trauma, but others, it's a magical seal. Something placed on them, usually as a child." I stared at him. "A seal?" Matthias set a plate of eggs and bacon in front of me but was clearly listening. You're saying someone deliberately made him mute? It's possible, Edward said. If that's the case, the seal can be broken. But it would take powerful magic. Hope bloomed in my chest for the first time since I'd woken up in this world. I could get my voice back. I grabbed my notepad. How? Who could do it? That's the tricky part, Edward admitted. There's only one witch in the city powerful enough, and she doesn't work cheap. Also, she hates alphas. All of us. Morgana, Reed said, looking up from his laptop. She's temperamental and dangerous. But she's our best shot, Matthias added. If you want to try, we can take you to her. I wrote quickly, yes, please. I want my voice back. All three of them nodded, and I felt a surge of gratitude. They were rivals, yes, and they all wanted to mark me for the power it would bring. But they were also helping me, actually trying to give me what I wanted. We'll go tonight, Matthias decided. Morgana does better business after dark. The rest of the day passed in a strange, sort of domestic routine. The three alphas continued their low-level competition for my attention. Edward trying to make me laugh with terrible jokes. Matthias cooking me lunch and dinner. Reed giving me books he thought I'd like. It was overwhelming but also kind of sweet. I spent some time exploring the penthouse and found a room that had been converted into a sort of art studio. There were canvases and paints, sketch pads and pencils. Without thinking, I sat down and started drawing, just random shapes at first, then more deliberate lines. You're an artist. Matthias's voice came from the doorway. I jumped, not having heard him approach. I shrugged and wrote, just a hobby. Helps me think. He walked over and looked at what I'd been sketching. A simple landscape, mountains and trees. You're talented. I felt my face heat up. Compliments were weird when you couldn't deflect them verbally. Matthias sat down in the chair across from me, watching me with those intense golden eyes. Can I ask you something? I nodded. Are you afraid of us? Of this situation? I considered the question carefully before writing. Sometimes. But you haven't hurt me. You've been kind. Confusing, but kind. We're trying, he said softly. I know this isn't what you wanted. Being hunted, being valued only for what your mark could give. But I want you to know, I see you. Not just the omega, not just the power. You, the person who runs away instead of accepting fate, who smiles at our arguments, who draws to think. My chest felt tight. That was maybe the most genuine thing anyone had said to me in either of my lives. Before I could write a response, Edward's voice echoed through the penthouse. Little Omega, come here. I got you something. Matthias rolled his eyes but stood, offering me his hand. I took it and let him lead me back to the living room where Edward was holding shopping bags with a triumphant expression. I noticed you had basically no clothes, Edward announced. So I fixed that problem. Also, I may have gotten carried away. He had. The bags were full of clothes, soft sweaters, comfortable pants, nice shirts, even pajamas that looked incredibly cozy. I pulled out a hoodie that was probably 3 sizes too big and immediately loved it. Thank you, I wrote. Try them on, Edward urged. I want to see if I got the sizes right. I spent the next hour having an impromptu fashion show, trying on different outfits while the 3 alphas gave their opinions. Reed preferred the more sophisticated looks. Matthias liked anything comfortable, and Edward just seemed happy whenever I smiled. This is ridiculous, Reed said at one point, but he was smiling slightly as he said it. This is important, Edward corrected. Our omega should have nice things. Still not your omega, I wrote, but I was smiling too. As evening approached, the mood shifted. We were going to see Morgana, and there was no guarantee she'd help. The 3 alphas became more serious, more protective. Stay close to us, Matthias instructed as we prepared to leave. Morgana's territory is neutral ground, but that doesn't mean it's safe. Reed handed me a small phone. Emergency number is already programmed. If anything happens, hit the red button and all 3 of us will know immediately. And by anything, he means anything, Edward added. Strange feeling, weird smell, random person looking at you wrong. We're not taking chances with your safety. Their concern was touching and slightly overwhelming. I pocketed the phone and nodded. The drive to Morgana's shop took us to the oldest part of the city, where the buildings were crumbling brick and the streetlights flickered uncertainly. The shop itself looked like it might collapse at any moment, with a faded sign that read "Fortunes and Fixes." "Charming," Reed muttered. We walked in together, a bell chiming overhead. The interior was cluttered with shelves full of jars containing things I didn't want to identify, herbs hanging from the ceiling, and crystals scattered on every available surface. Well, a voice said from the shadows. 3 alpha mafia bosses walk into my shop. This sounds like the start of a bad joke. A woman emerged from the back room, tall, with wild gray hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. Morgana, obviously. Her gaze swept over the alphas with clear disdain before landing on me. Her expression changed immediately. Oh, you poor thing. Come here, child." I glanced at Matthias, who nodded slightly, and approached the witch. She took my hands in hers, her skin warm and papery. "They've got you all tangled up, don't they?" she murmured. 3 rivals fighting over one little omega, and you can't even tell them off properly." She shot a glare at the alphas. "Which one of you moot him?" "None of us," Edward said quickly. "We just met yesterday. We think it's a seal. We were hoping you could break it." Morgana studied me more closely, her fingers tracing patterns in the air around my throat. I felt a tingling sensation, not unpleasant but definitely strange. "It's a seal, all right," she confirmed. "Old magic. Very old. Someone wanted to keep you quiet, little Omega. The question is why." I pulled out my notepad with shaking hands. "Can you remove it?" Morgana read my question and hummed thoughtfully. "I can. But it won't be pleasant. Breaking old magic never is. And there's a price." "Name it," Matthias said immediately. "Not from you," Morgana snapped. "From him. This is his seal, his voice, his choice. The price must be paid by him." I wrote quickly. "What kind of price?" "A memory," Morgana said simply. "To break the seal that binds your voice, you must give up a memory. Something precious, something that matters. The magic will take it from you, and you'll never get it back." I stared at her. "A memory? From my old life or this one? Did it matter?" "Think carefully," Morgana advised. "Once a memory is gone, it's gone forever. Even I can't restore it." I thought about my old life, dying alone, choking on toast, never really connecting with anyone. Then I thought about the last 2 days in this new world. Meeting 3 impossible alphas, eating mountains of food, drawing while Matthias watched, trying on clothes while they all gave opinions. Chaotic and confusing, but also warm, real. I made my decision and wrote, "I'll do it. Take a memory." "Which one?" Morgana asked. I hesitated, then wrote, "The memory of my death. From before." I didn't need to remember choking on toast. That fear, that loneliness. I'd rather forget it and focus on this new chance at life, complicated as it was. Morgana's eyes widened slightly. "You're from somewhere else, aren't you? A transmigrator. How interesting." She nodded. "Very well. That memory will do. Are you certain?" I nodded firmly. "Wait!" Reed stepped forward. "What happens during the ritual? Will it hurt him?" "There will be discomfort," Morgana admitted. "But I'll be as gentle as possible. You 3 will need to stay back. Alpha energy interferes with delicate magic." The 3 of them looked like they wanted to argue, but I shook my head at them. I needed this. I needed my voice back. Morgana led me to a clear space in the center of the shop and had me sit in a circle of salt she quickly poured. She lit candles around me, muttering in a language I didn't understand. The air grew thick with the scent of herbs and something older, something that made my omega instincts twitch nervously. "Relax," Morgana instructed. "Don't fight the magic. Let it do its work." I closed my eyes and tried to breathe steadily. I felt her hands on my throat, warm, gentle, and then the tingling sensation from before intensified. It spread through my neck, my jaw, my head, and then it felt like something was being pulled out of me. Not painfully, but definitely uncomfortably. Images flashed through my mind. My old apartment, my old life, that last moment of panic as I couldn't breathe. And then they faded, becoming distant and hazy. The memory dissolved like sugar in water, sweet and then gone. The tingling stopped. The uncomfortable pulling sensation ceased. And then, breathe in, Morgana said, and speak. I opened my mouth, and for the first time in this body, sound came out. I can. My voice was rough, scratchy from disuse, but it was there. My voice. I can talk. Behind me, I heard one of the alphas exhale sharply. I turned to see all three of them staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to wonder to something I couldn't quite name. Your voice, Matthias said softly. It's beautiful, Edward finished. Reed just nodded, looking almost stunned. I stood up on shaky legs, and Morgana steadied me. Easy now. The magic takes a toll. You'll need rest. Thank you, I said to her, testing out my voice again. Felt strange and wonderful all at once. Thank you so much. Morgana patted my cheek gently. Use it well, child. And be careful with these three. They may act civilized now, but alphas are possessive creatures. Don't let them consume you. We're right here, Edward pointed out. I know, Morgana said dryly. That's why I'm saying it. Now get out of my shop. You've had your miracle for the day. The drive back to the penthouse was quiet. I sat in the back seat, next to Edward, while Matthias drove and Reed rode shotgun. They kept glancing back at me like they couldn't quite believe I could speak now. Say something else, Edward finally requested. Please? Your voice is... It's really nice. I thought about teasing him but decided against it. What do you want me to say? Anything, he replied immediately. Tell us about yourself. Where you came from, what you like, your favorite color. Anything. My favorite color is blue, I said, surprising myself. I hadn't known that until the words came out. Like the sky just before sunset. Not dark yet, but getting there. Poetic, Reed observed, and there was approval in his voice. I like drawing, I continued, finding it easier to talk now that I'd started. And I guess I like food, based on how much I ate yesterday. And I don't know much about this world yet. The werewolf stuff, the mafia things. It's all very new. We can teach you, Matthias offered. Whatever you want to know. Why are you three rivals? I asked, genuinely curious. You seem like you could be friends if you tried. The car went silent. Then Edward laughed, but it sounded hollow. It's complicated. Our families have been at odds for generations, Reed explained. Territory disputes, power struggles, old grudges. The usual mafia drama. But it's not personal, Matthias added. At least not originally. We were actually not friends exactly, but not enemies either. Before our fathers made it clear we had to be. That's sad, I said quietly. Being told who to hate. Yeah, Edward agreed. It is. We arrived back at the penthouse and I was exhausted again. Breaking magical seals apparently took a lot of energy. But before I could head to bed, Matthias caught my arm gently. Tomorrow, he said, would you let me take you somewhere? Just the two of us. I'd like to get to know you better. Without the competition breathing down our necks. I glanced at Reed and Edward, who both looked like they wanted to protest, but Edward shrugged. Fair's fair. We each get time with him. Fine, Reed said tersely. But I get the day after. And I get the day after that, Edward chimed in. I should have been annoyed at them deciding my schedule without asking. But honestly, I was too tired to care. Okay, I agreed. One day each. But I get to decide what we do. All three of them nodded, and I headed upstairs to sleep, already wondering what tomorrow would bring. Matthias took me to an art museum. Not some fancy gala or expensive restaurant. An actual quiet museum full of paintings and sculptures. I hadn't expected that. You like drawing, he said as we walked through the galleries. I thought you might enjoy seeing some master's work. I did. I really did. We wandered through rooms filled with landscapes and portraits, abstract pieces and classical works. Matthias didn't talk much, just let me experience the art at my own pace. This one, I said, stopping in front of a painting of a stormy ocean. I love this one. Matthias stood beside me, studying the painting. Why? Because it's powerful but not scary? I said, trying to put the feeling into words. The waves are huge and the sky is dark, but there's light breaking through the clouds. Like even in chaos, there's hope. He looked at me instead of the painting. That's how you see things? Hope in chaos. I have to, I admitted. Otherwise, everything that's happened would be too overwhelming. We spent hours in the museum. Matthias bought me a sketchbook from the gift shop, a really nice one with thick paper, and told me to fill it with whatever I wanted. No pressure, no expectations. On the drive back, I asked him something I'd been wondering. Why do you want to mark me? Really? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, at first, honestly, it was about the power. What alpha wouldn't want to be the strongest? But then I met you. Saw your spirit, your strength, the way you smile when you think no one's watching. And now I want to mark you because I want you. The power would just be a bonus. I didn't know what to say to that. Felt too honest, too raw. You don't have to respond, Matthias added quickly. I just wanted you to know. Whatever choice you make, I want it to be informed. When we got back, Edward and Reed were waiting, both looking curious about how the day went. I smiled at them and said simply, it was nice. Reed's day was different. He took me to his company headquarters, a massive building downtown that screamed wealth and power. But we didn't stay in the fancy offices. Instead, he took me to the roof. I come here when I need to think, he explained as we stood at the edge, looking out over the city. It's quiet, peaceful. It's beautiful, I said, watching the sunlight glint off the other buildings. I wanted to show you my world, Reed continued. Not the violence or the danger, but this, the view from the top, what I'm trying to build. Which is, I prompted. Control, he said simply. Not in a bad way, but my family's organization was chaos when I took over. Brutal, unpredictable. I've been working to make it more structured, more professional. Reduce the bloodshed where I can. I looked at him with new eyes. That's actually kind of noble. He smiled slightly. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. We sat on the roof for a while, and Reed told me about his plans for the future, legitimate businesses he wanted to start, ways to transition his family's empire into something less criminal. It was ambitious and maybe a little naive, but I respected the dream. Why do you want to mark me? I asked him the same question I'd asked Matthias. Reed's answer was more calculated. Because you're strong. Not physically, but here. He tapped his chest. You ran from an arranged bond, survived meeting 3 dangerous alphas, and demanded we respect your choices. That kind of strength is rare. I want it beside me, not under me. That's very logical, I observed. I'm a logical person, he replied, but I'm also drawn to you in a way that isn't entirely logical. And that's interesting. Edward's day was chaos, as expected. He took me to a street fair in the older part of the city, lights and music and food vendors everywhere. It was loud and crowded, and I loved it. I figured you'd been cooped up enough, Edward explained, buying us matching masks from a vendor. Time to have some actual fun. We played carnival games. I was terrible at them, but Edward was surprisingly good. He won me a stuffed wolf that was so cute I hugged it immediately. We ate fried dough and candied apples, rode the Ferris wheel, and just existed without the weight of omega politics hanging over us. This is the best day I've had since I got here, I admitted as we sat on a bench, watching street performers. Edward grinned. Yeah? Mission accomplished then. Why do you want to mark me? I asked, completing my survey of alpha intentions. Edward's expression turned serious for once. Honestly? At first, same as the others, power, glory, bragging rights. But then you smiled at my terrible pancakes, and you wore the clothes I bought, and you laughed at the fair just now. And I realized I want to keep seeing that. Your happiness. If marking you means I get to protect that happiness, then that's why I want it. 3 different answers. 3 different alphas. 3 different futures I could choose. The next few weeks fell into a strange routine. The 3 of them continued their careful competition. Never aggressive, never forceful, just constantly trying to prove they were the best choice. They brought me gifts, took me places, showed me different parts of their worlds. Matthias taught me to cook, his patience endless as I burned things and made messes. Reed gave me books about werewolf history and politics, helping me understand the world I'd landed in. Edward made me laugh constantly. His jokes terrible, but his heart genuine. They were careful never to push for physical intimacy. No kissing, no inappropriate touching, just the occasional hand-holding or gentle hug. It was respectful but also clearly restrained. They wanted more but wouldn't take it. I started to care about all 3 of them, differently but equally. The problem came when other alphas started noticing me. Word had spread about the unmarked special Omega living under the protection of 3 rival mafia bosses. Some alphas were smart enough to stay away. Others weren't. The first incident happened at a cafe. I'd convinced the 3 of them to let me go out alone for just an hour. I needed space to think, to process everything. I was sitting with a coffee and my sketchbook when an alpha I didn't recognize sat down across from me. "You're the Omega everyone's talking about," he said, his smile predatory. "The one worth a fortune." I stood up immediately, reaching for my phone, but he grabbed my wrist. "Don't be rude. I'm just trying to have a conversation." "Let go," I said firmly, my voice steady even though I was terrified. He didn't. "Or what? You gonna call your alphas? They can't protect you every second." He was wrong. Before I could even press the emergency button, Matthias was there, pulling me away from the stranger with a growl that made the windows rattle. Reed appeared a moment later, blocking the exit, and Edward materialized at my other side. "You touched what's ours," Matthias said, his voice deadly calm. "I'm not." I started to say I wasn't theirs, but the strange alpha was already backing away, hands raised. "Mistake," the alpha stammered. "I didn't know." "Now you do," Reed said coldly. "Leave, and tell everyone else that this Omega is off limits." The alpha fled. I was left standing between my 3 protectors, heart racing. "How did you get here so fast?" I asked. Edward held up his phone sheepishly. "We may have been tracking your location, just in case." "What?" "For your safety," Matthias insisted. And apparently we were right to worry. I wanted to be angry about the invasion of privacy, but honestly, I was just relieved they'd shown up. "Fine, but you have to tell me when you're tracking me. No more secrets." They all agreed, though Reed added, "We're going to have to be more careful." That alpha was testing boundaries. Others will too. The incidents kept happening. Alphas approaching me in stores, at parks, even near the penthouse. Each time, my 3 protectors appeared like guardian angels with very sharp teeth. It would have been romantic if it wasn't so terrifying. "This can't continue," I said one night as we all sat in the living room. "I can't live in fear every time I step outside." "You need to choose," Reed said bluntly. "Once you're marked, once it's official, the challenges will stop. No alpha would dare approach another's bonded mate." "That's not a good reason to choose," I protested. "Picking one of you just to stop harassment." "Then what is a good reason?" Edward asked, leaning forward. "We've been courting you for weeks now. We've shown you who we are, what we can offer. We've been patient and respectful. But maybe we need to know if we even have a chance." I looked at each of them. Matthias with his steady golden gaze, Reed with his ice blue eyes, Edward with his green ones full of hope. How could I choose? They were all amazing in different ways. They all made me feel safe, valued, cared for. "I don't know," I admitted. "I care about all of you. That's the problem." "Then don't choose," Matthias said quietly. Everyone looked at him in surprise. "What?" Reed said. Matthias's expression was conflicted but determined. In werewolf history, there are rare cases of omega-centric packs, where one omega bonds with multiple alphas. It's uncommon, frowned upon by traditionalists, but it's possible. You're suggesting we share? Edward said slowly. I'm suggesting we let him decide what he wants, Matthias corrected. If he wants all of us, then we figure out how to make that work. If he wants only one, then the others step aside. If he wants none of us, then we accept that too. Reed looked thoughtful. An omega-centric pack. The three of us would have to cooperate fully. No rivalry, no competition. True partnership. Can you do that? I asked them. Can you actually get along? Or will you kill each other the moment things get stressful? They exchanged glances, long, weighted looks that seemed to communicate something beyond words. For you, Edward said finally. Yeah, I think we could. We'd have to set ground rules, Reed added. Clear boundaries and expectations. But it's possible, Matthias concluded. If it's what you want. I thought about it. Having all three of them different but complementary. Matthias's steadiness, Reed's intelligence, Edward's joy. Not having to choose, not having to break anyone's heart. I want to try, I said. But slowly. I need time to be sure this is real and not just about the power my mark could give. Take all the time you need, Matthias said. We're not going anywhere, Reed added. Edward grinned. Guess we're a pack now. A weird, dysfunctional, probably going to get in trouble pack. Probably, I agreed, smiling despite myself. Things changed after that conversation. The three alphas started actually cooperating, making decisions together instead of competing. They set up a schedule where we all spent time together and time in smaller groups. They started calling each other by name instead of just growling. It wasn't perfect. They still argued, still had their territorial moments. But they were trying, and that meant everything. One evening, about a month after Morgana broke my seal, I was in the art studio when all three of them came in looking unusually serious. We have something to tell you, Matthias said. And you're not going to like it. My stomach dropped. What happened? Your original intended mate, Reed said. The one you ran from. He's filed a formal challenge. A challenge to what? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I knew. To us, Edward explained. He's claiming you were promised to him first, and he has the right to fight for you. It's an old tradition, one we can't really refuse without losing face. I felt cold. Fight? Like actually fight. It's not to the death, Matthias assured me quickly. Just until one side yields. But yes, it will be physical combat. The three of us against him. That doesn't seem fair, I said. 3 against 1? He can bring allies, Reed said. Up to 3. So it'll be even numbers. When? I asked. 3 days, Edward said quietly. At the old amphitheater. It's neutral ground, and there will be witnesses to ensure fair play. 3 days. I had 3 days before the men I cared about would have to fight for the right to be with me. I don't want this, I said, my voice breaking. I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me. Matthias pulled me into a gentle hug. It's not your fault. This is pack law, werewolf tradition. We knew it might come to this. But we're going to win, Edward said confidently. We're stronger together. And we have something he doesn't. What? I asked. A reason to fight beyond just possession, Reed said. We're fighting for you, for your choice, for your happiness. That makes us dangerous. The next 3 days were tense. The alphas trained constantly, practicing coordination and strategy. I watched them spar and felt sick with worry. They were strong, yes, but they were also about to face an alpha who'd probably been planning this fight for weeks. On the day of the challenge, they tried to convince me to stay at the penthouse. It might get violent, Matthias warned. I don't want you to see that. Too bad, I said firmly. I'm coming. This is about me. I deserve to be there. They couldn't argue with that logic, so they brought me to the old amphitheater. It was a crumbling stone structure on the edge of the city, filled with werewolves from various packs who'd come to witness the challenge. My original intended mate stood in the center with 3 other alphas I didn't recognize. He was tall, broad, with dark hair and darker eyes that fixed on me with possessive hunger. "That's him," Edward muttered. "He looks like he eats kittens for breakfast." "Focus," Reed said tersely. The fight began at sunset, overseen by a neutral alpha elder who explained the rules. No killing, no maiming, fight until one side yields or can't continue. Anything else was fair game. It was brutal. Even without blood and gore, watching the people I cared about get thrown around and hit was horrible. But they fought as a unit. Matthias taking hits to protect the others, Reed using strategy to outmaneuver opponents, Edward being surprisingly vicious when needed. The tide turned when my original intended mate tried to go after me directly, probably planning to mark me mid-fight and claim victory. But he didn't make it 3 steps before all 3 of my alphas intercepted him, working together with perfect coordination. "She's OURS," Matthias snarled. "He gets to choose," Reed corrected. "And he chose us," Edward finished. They took down my ex-intended mate together, and his allies yielded moments later. The elder called the fight, declaring my 3 alphas the winners. The amphitheater erupted in cheers and howls. I ran down to the arena floor, throwing my arms around all 3 of them even though they were sweaty and bruised. "You're okay," I breathed. "You're all okay. Told you we'd win," Edward said, wincing as he smiled. "Never doubted it," Matthias added, though he was leaning on Reed slightly. "Liar," Reed said affectionately. "You were terrified. Can we go home now?" I asked. "I want to patch you all up and maybe never let you fight again." "Deal," they all agreed. Back at the penthouse, I insisted on playing nurse, cleaning their cuts and bruises with probably unnecessary fussing. They let me, seeming to enjoy the attention. "Thank you," I said quietly as I bandaged Matthias's hand. "For fighting for me, for respecting my choice, for being patient." "Thank you," he replied, "for giving us a chance, for seeing past the rivalry and the reputation, for choosing us," Reed added. "For being you," Edward finished. I looked at the 3 of them, my 3 impossible alphas who'd gone from rivals to reluctant allies to this, whatever this was, pack, family, mine. "I think I'm ready," I said softly. They all tensed. "Ready for what?" Matthias asked carefully. "To be marked," I clarified. "By all of you, if the offer still stands." The room went completely silent for 3 heartbeats. Then Edward whooped. Reed smiled genuinely for maybe the first time ever, and Matthias pulled me close with such gentle reverence it made my chest tight. "Are you absolutely certain?" Matthias asked. "This is permanent. Forever. No going back." "I'm certain," I said. "I want this. I want all of you." The marking ceremony happened a week later, giving us time to prepare and for them to heal fully. It was private, just the 4 of us in the penthouse, no witnesses or formal traditions. That's how I wanted it, intimate and real. They took turns, each bite careful and deliberate. First Matthias, his mark settling on the left side of my neck. Then Reed on the right. Finally Edward in the center, completing the trinity. Each mark sent warmth flooding through me, connecting me to them in ways I couldn't fully describe. I could feel them now, their emotions and presence like distant music in my mind. And the power everyone had talked about came, yes. I could feel it thrumming through our new bond, making all 4 of us stronger. But more importantly, I felt complete, whole in a way I'd never been in either of my lives. "How do you feel?" Matthias asked, all 3 of them watching me with concern and wonder. "Perfect," I said honestly, like I finally found where I belong. The next few months were an adjustment, learning to share space with 3 alphas, learning to balance their different personalities, learning to navigate pack dynamics. But we made it work. Matthias taught me to defend myself, patient through every clumsy attempt. Reed helped me understand the political landscape, making sure I could hold my own in pack meetings. Edward kept us all from taking life too seriously, his humor a constant reminder that joy was allowed. And I I drew them, constantly, filling sketchbook after sketchbook with images of my three mates, together and separate. I drew our life, our quiet moments, our loud arguments, our perfect chaos. The other packs eventually accepted our unusual arrangement. We were too strong to challenge, too unified to undermine. Our omega-centric pack became something of a legend, three rival alphas brought together by one stubborn omega who refused to choose. One evening, almost a year after I'd first arrived in this world, I sat in our living room surrounded by my three mates. Matthias was reading, Reed was on his laptop, Edward was attempting to learn guitar and failing spectacularly. It was ordinary and domestic and absolutely perfect. "Hey," I said, getting their attention. "I just realized something." They all looked up, immediately alert. Even a year later, they jumped to attention whenever I spoke, like my voice was still a miracle. "What?" Matthias asked. "I never said thank you," I explained. "For that first night when I ran away and crashed into you. For protecting me. For courting me. For fighting for me. For choosing to share instead of making me choose. For everything." Edward set down his guitar, Reed closed his laptop, and Matthias marked his page. They moved closer, surrounding me with warmth and safety. "You don't have to thank us," Reed said. "We'd do it all again," Matthias added. "In every lifetime," Edward finished. I smiled, feeling the bond between us pulse with shared emotion. "I know, but still, thank you for being my pack, my family, my home." They kissed me, gentle, delicious kisses that promised forever. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I'd never been luckier. I died choking on toast in one life and woke up as a mute omega in another. Got chased by three Mafia alphas who turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. The universe, it turned out, had a funny way of working things out. Years passed. Our pack grew stronger, our bonds deeper. We never had children. My biology as a special omega apparently made that impossible. But we found other ways to build our family. We took in younger werewolves who had nowhere to go, creating a safe space for outcasts and orphans. The three alphas eventually merged their territories and operations, creating something new and better than any of them had built alone. They became legends in the werewolf world, not for their individual power, but for their unprecedented cooperation. And me? I became known as the omega who broke tradition, who refused to follow the rules, who created a new kind of pack. I opened an art gallery, selling my drawings and paintings, using the profits to fund pack community programs. We weren't perfect. We still argued, still had jealous moments, still struggled with the complications of four strong personalities sharing one life. But we always worked through it, always came back to the foundation we'd built on respect and choice and genuine care. On our 10th anniversary as a bonded pack, I painted a portrait of the four of us. In it, we stood together against a stormy sky with light breaking through the clouds, chaos and hope, exactly how I described that painting in the museum so long ago. Matthias hung it in our living room where everyone could see it. "That's us," he said, wrapping an arm around my waist. "Perfectly imperfect. Chaotically wonderful," Edward added from my other side. "Uniquely ours," Reed finished, pulling all of us into a group hug, and standing there, surrounded by my three impossible alphas. I couldn't help but think that maybe dying and transmigrating and losing my voice and gaining it back and meeting these three ridiculous men was exactly what I'd needed. Maybe the universe hadn't been cruel or random. Maybe it had known all along where I belonged. In a penthouse apartment with three former rival Mafia alphas who fought over who made the best coffee and argued about whose turn it was to do dishes and loved me with a fierceness that still took my breath away. Perfect? No, but mine. Absolutely, completely, wonderfully mine. And that's my story, going from toast casualty to omega royalty, if you can believe it. If you stuck around this long, thanks for listening to my absolutely wild life. And hey, drop a comment about which alpha you would have picked. Maybe subscribe if you want more crazy supernatural romance stuff, and I'll catch you in the next story. Stay awesome, friends.